The Reset podcast is sponsored by Bose. With my new Bose QC35 headphones, nothing gets between me and my music. The noise canceling is world class. They're completely Bluetooth, so there's no wires. The sound is amazing. My producer and I love these so much that we use them to record every single show. For more information about Bose QC35 headphones and other Bose products, check out Bose.com. I'm Laura Mignott, co-founder of Digital Flash. Welcome to the Reset podcast. Each week, I'll bring on a friend of mine from various industries, from entertainment, advertising, maybe someone from government, and talk about how their industry needs to be reset. We'll laugh, we'll make some jokes, we'll have some wine and some french fries here on my couch in New York City, and we'll hope you take something good out of it. On the very first episode of the Reset podcast, I've got my awesome friend, Gemma Craven, who's SVP over at McCann. We're going to be talking about some really interesting things and what's happening in influencer marketing and how that can be reset. We'll laugh, we'll make some jokes, and we're having lots of rosé and french fries. Hey, Gemma.
Hello. How are you?
For our friends out there who don't know who you are, because you suck if you don't know who Gemma is.
Too kind.
Can you give us a little background about who and how awesome you are?
Well, my name is Gemma Craven. I'm currently the head of social and mobile at McCann. As you mentioned, McCann is one of the older ad agencies.
Mad Men.
You may know, yes, they're the agency that acquired Don Draper's in the last season of Mad Men. And the agency actually has gone through a bit of a reset in terms of evolving and bringing in new talent to bring new skills and really implanting that into the creative process. And that's why I joined, is to help further push social media and the platforms deeper into the creative work rather than it being a separate department, which is how agencies had built up social. They built separate departments and now
everything was siloed.
Yes. Now everything's integrated. So been there for nearly a year now.
A year now. Wow.
Yes.
Because just the other day, I'm going to McCann. I was like, what?
Prior to that, I'd spent nearly 2 years at Spreadfast, so really diving into the tech side of our industry, which again was super interesting to look at it in a different way. I kind of look at it as a triangle of platform, agency, and brand, and you can kind of look through one of those three sides to the product in the middle. So that was a great sort of couple of years. And before that, another big agency experience running Ogilvy's social at Ogilvy practice in New York for, 4 years that was.
I've been That's where we met.
Yeah, it was indeed. I've been in America for nearly 10 years now, which is kind of cool.
What was your first job?
Well, now, do you want first job, kind of proper job after university, or do you want first ever job? Or should I tell you both?
I feel like both is necessary with you because I have a sneaky suspicion that with you, your first job probably involved something mildly illegal. So,
there were some mildly illegal jobs along the way, but my first ever job was actually waitressing at my local pub in a village in Yorkshire, which is in the north of England, for those of you who don't know where that is. And I was definitely under the legal age of being able to work in a pub.
Shocker.
Yes. And I was a waitress. And I think I got paid not much money, but I loved it. So, yeah, the good old pub, that served me well. But my first job in this industry was after I graduated. I studied French, because why not?
Of course.
And I didn't really know what to do. And a friend of mine, who I believe you have met, my dear friend Ben, said, you talk too much. You should probably go into PR. And rather than questioning it, I was like, okay. As you should, picked up a phone directory and found some PR agencies. I was living in this...
You picked up a phone directory? You realize you're going to give up how old you are by even talking about the fact that phone directories actually exist.
Old school.
Yeah. Okay, Grandma.
Newsflash. This was in 1999. It's a while ago.
Oh, yeah. I'm not going to tell you where I was at that point.
And I found this PR agency near where I just finished studying, which is in the south of England. And it was called LGPR, and LG stood for the owner's initials, Lorraine and Graham. I didn't know that.
I thought it was the LG, the TV screen.
Yeah, no, we did. The agency did PR for a BMW dealership, a funeral director. An orchestra. Lorraine was a big opera singer, so we did a lot of stuff for her. And I got an internship there. I carried on waitressing. And I stayed, and I interned for about 3 months, and then they offered me a full-time job. So I took it because I thought, why not? And then we got a client, which was GNC, sorry, not GMC.
Like the weight loss supplements?
Yeah, like the supplement shop, what we call it here. We did a project for them, and then through that, I actually got recruited to another agency in London, and that was after about 6 months. So that meant that my move up to London happened. I got a job at a big agency. I was in tech PR for a while, and it was all good. But Lorraine and Graham,
cheers.
My start.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, where was my first job?
How hokey is that?
That is extremely hokey, but extremely you. So I'm not at all surprised. I'm just curious to know, like, were there any like slightly insane stories that crossed over from you being at the pub working while you were interning at the PR firm? Did you ever see like your clients in your pub getting drunk while during business hours?
Luckily the pub was when I was 13, and the PR firm was
wait,
was, yes.
Back up the truck.
The pub was my first ever job.
Are there no labor laws in my home country? So I know that you all can't tell this, but I'm actually English, but I came here when I was 3, so I don't sound like Gemma, but I have a British passport and I'm still a citizen, so there's that. But 13 seemed illegal.
It may have been, but it was waitressing.
But you were tall. I was
tall and quiet, so I got away with it.
You quiet is also something, again.
I know, it did happen.
I was I wonder what like 13-year-old Gemma
and
must
then
like.
the PR firm was after I graduated, so there was no crossover.
All right. So you say, all those who believe her, raise your hand. Wait, no one. All right. Well, okay. That auspicious beginning where you were breaking labor laws and clearly using child slave labor to becoming a PR person makes a logical connection into working in tech PR. Like, yeah, I wouldn't see anything different.
You know what, as well, I always think that anybody who's worked in the service industry, whether it's behind a bar or waitressing or, just being in service, I will always consider them to hire them, because I think it shows a lot if you can deal with a restaurant full of people, if you've got a good tableside manner, if you can multitask, if there is such a thing, and you can just get shit done, frankly. So I think there's something about it that's quite, like, you have to enjoy the stress and push of it. Yeah. And you have to enjoy being nice to people.
You kind of have to. It's kind of funny because, like, my first job was at Office Depot, which is sort of like a Staples-esque place.
I know.
And the same deal. It's like, that job was hysterical because they basically put a bunch of 17-year-olds in charge of the entire store. And so we would literally run the store because the guy who was our manager was like never there. But you got to run a store. And so like I'm always nice to people in retail because like I know what your job is like.
Right.
It's like the things they make you do, but also the ability to sort of, again, multitask, be quick on your feet, and deal with crazy people. Because think about the person who at 8:55 on a Wednesday evening is running in to buy a highlighter. Like, that person is special.
Right.
And you're like,
and it's probably been both of us at some point.
Yeah. You have to be able to deal with people. And I think, that's actually an interesting segue because in talking about influencer marketing, because influencer marketing has morphed into this weird, I don't even kind of know, like alien being that sucked us all into it. And now I feel like we're all part of the Borg. And it's a mess. We've seen lots of companies fall apart, close up shop. We just saw Mode Media, which had $1 billion valuation, go up in flames a couple weeks ago, left thousands of people out of work. A lot of bloggers apparently have gotten unpaid.
Wow.
You've seen a lot of horror stories about that. And it's like nuts. And like, where did the world go from being like, okay, this is like a new industry. People who had talents in Facebook, blogging, Instagram, Snapchat, Periscope are now like these big talents.
Thank you.
But how are they getting paid? What does it all mean? And why is it such a bizarre side of the universe right now? And how are we going to try? And if ever there was something that needed to be reset, it's the state of influencer marketing. And I know that from our standpoint as an agency, we were built on influencer marketing, but we didn't call it. We call it networking.
Right.
Because basically when we started 6 years ago, no one knew who Digital Flash was. It was just some women who were throwing these events. And so our idea was very simply, let's go tweet about the event happening, go to a bunch of events, meet some people, make the event really special and unique. And then it's going to be something you want to tweet about while you're there. And then that goes online. People see those things online and then like, oh, cool, when's the next one? And then that kind of creates a circle. So like, we didn't call that influencer marketing, but then someone was saying to me the other day, like, you realize that was like the beginnings of what this was, because you essentially were making an audience online. You were creating something that was special. People were experiencing it in real life, and then they were telling their friends about it. And that's where we started. And that's 6 years ago. And now it's about like Kim Kardashian talking about flat tummy tea. So we have gone through this very bizarre parallel universe, and it's hard to try and figure out what's next and how do we sort of make sense of it all.
Yeah, I think you hit on exactly one of the first things that's kind of wrong with the space now is what the term influence means. And when you were talking about how you built Digital Flash, that's influence has existed since humans have existed. So people have influenced others in different ways, whether they are an authority on something or whether they've got vital information or whether there's somebody like them that they can identify with or whether there's somebody that's got exclusive access to something or, all of those things have existed. And when this sort of social media marketing space started out, influencer marketing, as you said, was about that kind of connection, people having specialist interests, whether it was what you were distilling with Digital Flash or somebody who was very knowledgeable about wine or food or was a great parent and had a great parenting blog. And it was very authentic. And it was all about when you were a brand or an agency, those brands that were willing to sort of dip their toe in and find, okay, here's iJustine. We could send her on a test drive with a new Ford Fiesta, and maybe we could take this on a trip all throughout the US and get like vloggers and bloggers doing these test drives, and then in return they get to see the new car and they get to drive it for a week. Like it was very much give them content that would be great for their audience, again, as you guys were doing for
it was like, I think you hit on a really important point. It's the authenticity was there. And I think it was very innocent back then.
Yes.
And like that seems to have gone out the window.
There still is some of that, but it's so hard to find. And it's so, what's been layered on top of it. I feel like it's this gold rush where everyone's like, there's so much money being thrown at influencer marketing because of that desire for authenticity that has meant
that you're trying to buy.
Right. And so it's like throw it against the wall, see how much will stick with fees in certain places. I know we've talked about talent, people behaving badly because they're just not used to working professionally with brands and agencies. And it's just become like this layer of, this layer on top of that authentic piece of, I'm going to ask for all the money. I'll do, 3 posts, 2 live streams, and I'll post on Facebook for this amount, but it's like inauthentic. So the authenticity is gone. And you just have to look at things like the whole, Scott Disick with the
copy and paste.
tea. I mean, just to show the additional problem is then you've got traditional celebrities, so TV, stars looking to cash in on their followings. So it's all about, well, I've got 6 million followers. I can now do this. Brand X will pay me Y. And it's nuts. It's absolutely nuts. When I look back, I was thinking about this earlier, 2 to 3 years. I look back 3 years and how different, to your point, very innocent, very authentic and very controlled. There was a lot of people working within FTC guidelines because that's another whole thing.
Well, that's a big problem right now because I think everyone's sort of forgetting that if you put up a post and a brand pays you, that is an ad. You need to disclose that. And we've seen the hand slapping of like brands like Cole Haan, kind of with the Kardashians, but you also have to think about it. Like, it's almost as if the FTC is kind of afraid of going after the big celebrities because, like, if you really wanted influencers to comply, all you'd need to do is slap one just one of the Kardashian kids for what they're doing and make them pay a real fine.
Yeah.
And that would be the end of it.
Yeah. The FTC has always been a bit of a wuss when it comes to this. It's like, come on, put out some...
Have some balls.
Grow a pair, put out some guidelines, enforce them. To your point, you don't need to go, like, put the balls to the wall, with all of them. It would just be a few high-profile cases and just make it easier for people to stick to the guidelines. Again, in the earlier days, there were industry bodies, there were groups of agencies that really worked to comply. And now I just feel like no one gives a shit. People are just like, whatever.
They don't care.
No one's going to catch us, so we're just going to go for it.
And it's also, when you think about it, like, you look at the real world, it's also this weird confluence of, like, the real world seeping into influencer marketing and influencer marketing creeping into the real world. Yeah. And people don't know. And, like, if you're an average person, you don't know what's real and what's actually fake.
Right.
Like, you could think that, like, Celebrity X really does love Gatorade. and I'm going to go get this. I'm going to get this Gatorade. And it's like, well, actually, no.
Yeah.
But it also could be that, like, I follow this very bespoke handbag designer, and she suddenly starts talking about this really cool bespoke wine. And I'm like, oh, she really discovered this. And it's like, oh, wait, no, she actually was getting paid for that. And I think that's sort of the weird intersection, because then you're seeing all this stuff, like when you see these influencers at things that don't make sense. Because, like, with us, we're always, when we work with influencers, we try really, really hard to curate it so it makes sense.
Right.
Like, if you're, like, an art person who's at Art Basel every single year, why in the world would I take you to Comedy Central?
Right.
Like, it just doesn't make sense. Like, you don't want to be at the Barbara roast.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't, you would rather be at Afropunk, because at least there's an intersection that makes sense from your world to the real world. Like, if you're interested in art and you're interested in culture just because that's who you are, you'd want to be at an interesting art and culture festival. Like, that's just where it would easily translate for you to be. Now, if I was a brand and I was doing that, that's what I would be looking for. Like, how do I put you in somewhere where it doesn't seem like you're just like this, you're in like, you're in the weeds, but you're like, you're authentically being somewhere that's complementary to the world that you currently reside in, as opposed to this sort of jibber jabber where, like, yeah, totally, I've got 10,000 followers, so I should be at this thing.
Yeah. And, there was, I will say, there was one point where one of our large global brands actually asked, should we buy followers? Because we feel like we need to do that for some of their spokeswomen, because it was about, well, they need more followers to get to a certain point. And honestly, that took me back to, I was like, oh my goodness, we're going back.
Freefollowers.com.
This is the worst. And the industry has moved on so that the early work that was done to protect against that kind of nonsense, people have kind of forgotten it. And again, this whole ecosystem has sprung up around it. There's the multi-channel networks, there's kind of influencer agencies, there's no strong central industry body that has teeth. And then there's, marketers who've been in this space for a certain period of time who are there. And believe me, there's pockets of greatness.
But those pockets are getting really hard to find.
And when it started out, social media marketing, everybody to get access to the medium, you had to know what you were doing. And it was an evolving industry, but we were all learning together and setting standards together. And now it's not, I feel like it's scaled, which is great. It's what we always wanted, but the standards haven't scaled with it. And that's what needs to be reset, in my opinion, whether like best practices, compliance, even the word influencer, like, can we get rid of it?
Yeah, I don't think it's not influencer. It's marketing.
Right.
It's just a different type of marketing. Right. If you look at TV, if you look at print, if you look at digital, at the end of the day, it's just marketing.
It is.
It's just like, there is this, I always sort of envision it as kind of a wheel. Like, everything is sort of stacked together in a wheel. And so each piece of it goes round and round, and they all are supposed to intersect concurrently. And if it's done well, then the wheel keeps moving round and round and round.
Right.
But if you sort of take out pieces because you think you have to stick social over here or experiential over here, then you no longer have a wheel.
Right.
And it's sort of, there's a piece missing to this. And then that's when stupid stuff happens. And I think that's kind of where we're at right now, where we're like stuck in stupid.
Yeah, I love that. We are. And I think I was reading something about Chrissy Teigen moaning that she had to disclose the fact that she was being paid on behalf of a brand, like having some kind of tweet off with somebody about it. And like, that just wouldn't have happened a few years ago, but it's happening now. And it needs to, again, something needs to happen to reset to the point of, that's not even a question. If you're going to work with a brand, you need to know that there's 5 things you're going to have to do, and it's best practice. And that's how it works. Because if you're going to make a TV ad, or if you're going to put a print ad out there, if you're going to do anything, even with an e-commerce site, there's ways and methodologies, and it's all proven, and that's how you do it. You don't try and complain and fight against it. You don't bitch and moan.
Well, it's funny, like this is 9 years ago, I worked on one of the first kids' social networks. For a well-known brand of snack foods that I can never eat again, that look like little fish that are gold.
Sounds like Old Mish.
Old Mish. Totally Old Mish. And, that site was nearly killed me, number one. And two, the amount of legal regulations we went through, from parental notifications to how the characters were designed. Like, you literally could not turn the symbol of their brand into a cartoon character. Like, as you can't, amorphize it? So, like, it has, like, human-esque characteristics. Like, the way we did the smile was legally regulated.
Right.
Because you literally could not make this look like you were making a cartoon for kids so that kids would try and eat all of these snacks by themselves. Like, that's how deliberate it was. And that's 9 years ago. And now, basically, you've got everything under the sun. No one cares how old you are, because, like, every kid can lie. And everyone is supposed to be 13. Doesn't matter. They can be 8. They have an iPad. They will be online in seconds. And there is no regulation for anything.
What's the goal? What's the outcome? Are you doing it just because you should, like everyone else is doing it? Or are you doing it because you want to reach this niche community of cyclists or wine lovers, or like moms who are in Ohio who have a specific, again, interest themselves? Or is it just because? And I think that's the thing that's really changed. Because if I told you I'd found this person and they've got X million of followers, and they do these great things on Vine where they make, stop motion look like the computer disappears when it touches, like, cool, that's cool, but is it what you really want to achieve? And again,
and where's the scale? Like, how do you even attempt to scale at that point? Because it's like, you do that for like a campaign, but 3 months from now, you're going to use them again? 6 months from now, or a year from now? Like, where is it going to be? Is there any long-term value? Yeah. If you look at influencers, it's like spokespeople.
Right.
Where, like, whoever was the face of X brand, that was like the Old Spice guy. Even with someone like the Old Spice guy, like, you hear someone who you thought for certain would essentially be like the guy. And that was basically a 6 months campaign. Like, has anyone heard of Isaiah Mustafa in the last couple of years? And he's like, oh, well, because, like, everyone's fickle. So, like, they're on to the next new shiny object. Or if you go way back to, like, Subservient Chicken, where, like, that was, like, the first one where, like, I can control some human being and do something. Isn't this insane? And it was a thing, gone again.
Yeah.
Is anyone out there doing it well, do you think? I mean...
So I think they are.
That was very American of you, by the way.
Are?
That was very R.
I think they are. You can edit that in. I think they are, darling. I think they are, and I think brands that are doing it well are the ones that are tapping into the communities that already exist, where there is the passion point. So one that I love, a brand that I think is doing well, is NYX Cosmetics. So NYX is a brand that was actually bought out, I think, a couple of years ago, but it's much beloved by makeup artists and only available in certain stores. They don't have their own stores. It's got that whole, like, exclusive. Yeah, it's hard to find. And they've cultivated a community by sharing their content of, people will post their looks that they've made with NYX Cosmetics, and then they'll share that on their own channels. They host events for influencers. They actually set up a pop-up store for bloggers. So what NYX has done well is infiltrated behaviours, a community, found the influencers within the community by working with them, giving them products, sharing the images that they make these looks, sharing them on their own pages.
A real give and take.
Right.
Like, oh my gosh, we love how you used our eyeshadow to turn their stuff into a cat.
Sharing, their images on NYX's own channel. So giving them, the spot in the sun, running contests for kind of the NYX beauty whatever of the year. And then again, running that whole contest with the community and doing what I would say is fairly old school, but methodical influencer marketing, without trying to force artificial content behavior on a community of people who are really passionate about makeup and the brand.
Because you already got a rabid following. Like if they already know that they love your stuff, it's kind of like with MAC Cosmetics. So like women love MAC, and it's like because I can transform into this whole other beautiful creature. And it sounds like NYX is kind of the same way. Like they've got this fan base where they're like, I can make myself, and I think it's something about the fact that it's positive.
Right.
It's not like weird.
And it's very creative as well. So sometimes their community and the kind of influentials within it will do like these crazy designs on their faces. And it's not about a kind of a Kardashian way of making
contouring.
No, it's like, how can you make a lizard face with these new NYX like eyeshadows and stuff that's like really rewarding, I think. And I think I just feel quite in that beauty space. That was one of the original spaces that really popped with influencers.
You had all these beauty bloggers and like everyone's doing all this stuff.
That all still exists, but they just stand out to me as a very authentic voice. And again, they've built their business on community. And, Michelle Phan has set up her own, like her Ipsy
she's
range.
L'Oreal makes that.
Yeah, and she does it. I get Ipsy, just I wanted to sort of test it out and see what it was like. And you get every month you get a little kind of pouch with 5 samples in it, and you can get it for 1 month or you can get it for a year. And I will say what's good is it comes with a card inside it saying share your look, rate the products, but it's more about getting volume than that authenticity that I think NYX drives, which is, hey, we know you're a makeup artist or very skilled makeup user, and we want to showcase your looks. Here's ways to enter this contest, like have your stuff shared on our channels, come to the pop-up store that we made. And it's just it's super smart.
It's really making it about, it's taking it from just being at a very inaccessible, inauthentic place and bring it right back down to like, here's why we like you, Gemma. And you can do really cool stuff, and we would love to see it in our store. Yeah. And I think that's kind of where we have to kind of get back to.
I agree.
Like, we've gotten so far away from that. And it's like, there are all these different things you could be doing. There are more platforms now. You're definitely you're definitely able to do more, but it's about doing it the right way.
Exactly. And the right way, to your point of connecting back to the reason why that person's influential to a group of people, and not just because they've got millions of followers, but they might have less followers. We always ran our influencer audits, and we'd look at their authority within a community, and would often counsel clients, don't go for this person just because they're the obvious choice with the bigger audience, but look at things like, engagement on their content, the number of times they post, the kind of the sentiment around them, and build up a specific score for influencers, because I think people just have forgotten that and get swayed by numbers.
I think that what happens is you get so freaked because, this person's got 1 million followers. You're like, okay, I just want to be the first person who gets to that 1 million followers. And you're like, that's not the person you want. It's that sort of power curated middle. And I think we've talked a lot about, when we've gone to conferences and heard this power middle. Right. I think that's almost the wrong way. I think the real thing is the fact that that curated middle is the important piece, because you can be a middle of around 100,000 person follower influencer and still be a schmuck. It's really about that 100,000 that is actively engaging with you legitimately in the real world. Because also I think the other part about it is, what always annoys me with some of these influencers is that they're never home. You can always tell that literally they're being paid every single week, because this week they're at this resort, this week they're at that resort. Right. And so you're like, so basically this person is just essentially a hired gun. This person no longer lives their life anymore. That's the life they're living. And I think as someone who, when we're trying to find them for our clients, we're like, well, do you actually ever do anything that's not look like you're being paid for it? Yeah. Do you ever go to brunch? Yeah. It's when we go out for a drink and we take a picture of the drinks that we had. That's because we're just out having a drink. We both work in this industry, but I have a life, you have a life.
Yeah.
And I think that's also part of it, where you're like forgetting about the fact that these people are not celebrities who have bodyguards and they're Brangelina.
Right.
It's like, you're supposed to be a regular person who just has this interesting following, and you have this you're a curated tastemaker, as opposed to just a hired gun 24/7, 365.
Yeah. I think the other space to watch that's interesting too is fashion, because you'll see, and I always look ahead to Asia, because I think that's where
always way ahead.
Way ahead. And it's never going to filter down exactly, because the internet grew up differently. Here and there, it's,
it's a behavior
mobile.
Right.
And here we're going from desktop to mobile. But, so in Asia, you'll see these influencers who then set up their own stores on WeChat or Line, and then they're selling the stuff that they're sharing on their social channels, and you can then buy it within that whole ecosystem. And now I'm seeing a lot of fashion influencers who on their Instagram, they will tag the retailers that they've got partnerships with. They'll style a beautiful look always on themselves. Or they'll have, there's quite a few who've got their own lines now, whether that's like basic tees or something more. And I think that's interesting, because that's essentially, I want to look like you, I want to wear that top, I want to buy it, which is what the kind of the social web enables. And that's a whole different sort of, it's like way forward, but that's an influencer controlling their own.
They have their own ecosystem
in a different way.
And that's interesting, because like if you look at that, then the next behavior for that is then going to be chatbots. Mm-hmm. Because what's going to happen is that like they don't want to do that for every single person who comes to their Instagram. They essentially want to have that if then this. So basically, if you like my page, then you get a message saying, well, you want to buy this top? Oh, I want to buy this top right now. Okay, the top is $19.99. Put your credit card information in, and boom. So you're going to have like this weird, again, it's like what's going to happen when you essentially have, you've now closed the loop, whereby like influencers now essentially are closing their own revenue.
Right.
Yeah. Inside of Instagram or inside Facebook Messenger.
And I think that's actually one way that we're going to weed out the chaff, quite frankly, because if you've got 3 million followers and you were on maybe a popular reality TV show, but the influencers either bought or, rubbish people, you couldn't sell the thing that you just got paid to promote, even if you can't manage to pay. Like you couldn't actually, because people won't buy it from you because you haven't got a quality following. You might look like you do, have a lot of people, but I would say the smart, savvy influencers that have done that. And again, there's only, there's certain industries that works for. And I think fashion is.
No, I think you're right. I think you're definitely on it, because if you think about a lot of there was like, what was it called? Is it My Gene? Or like, it's like this, it literally looks like the internet exploded all over this brand. But it's for like, I guess Gen Z. And it's all about like this stuff where this girl basically has created this whole shopping ecosystem on Instagram where teenage girls buy all this stuff. And it's just like, it's as if the 90s exploded all over it. However, like she has essentially made this great little economy for herself. Like she literally is this person. Like she has figured out how to make these t-shirts, make these sneakers. And basically it's just like, giant bubble letters and like glitter and foolishness. But like she's essentially creating the business for herself. Or like the kid who's a sneakerhead. Like there's like, and it's interesting because
16-year-old sneakerhead guy,
and he's like a multi-millionaire already because he's like buying and selling sneakers off of Instagram. And like it's interesting because you're going to have these people who are like figuring out that there's an actual economy around them.
And that's the smart stuff.
Yeah. And
there's a store for teenage girls called Brandy Melville. That's what
that is. I see it in Soho, and I'm like, what
and you don't know what it. They've got a very like limited number of stores. All of the clothes have this one size clothes, but their whole Instagram is it's like the girls that they hire in store are Instagram. They've got a big Instagram following already, and they are the girls that embody the brand, and they're the girls that the kind of the teen wants to buy from or be. And, they use their Instagram following to curate and decide which looks they should put into the shops. There's that exclusivity thing because you can't find it on every high street. Do we say high street? In every big city, they've tapped into the power of, and this kind of takes me to my next point of when we think about influence, and I still stand by how do we get rid of the word? It's like I always look at it as a pyramid, and I'm doing a pyramid action, everybody.
I think, yes, it's serious pyramid action.
Serious pyramiding today. And there's that, to your point, there's that middle layer and then there's kind of the mass layer. But what Brandy Melville's done is tapped into the people that matter to their audience, to their consumer.
The curated folks.
Right. So, you've got those superstars at the top. And we need to move away from thinking about them all the time to the different layers in the pyramid. And that might include employees. It might include people that just love your brand and talk about it all the time, those advocates. It includes this. I've heard the term micro-influencer a lot of late.
Yeah, I think
that's to do with numbers. I think the
problem is this word influencer.
Right.
Because you know what? If you think about it, I hate even saying this, it is talent. They are, like in the WME and UTA, CAA world, they essentially are talent. And their talent is blogging. Their talent is periscoping. Their talent is Snapchatting. And if you look at it from that, I also think from a regulation standpoint, if you sort of look at it that way as well, because like you can never have George Clooney's doing Nespresso unless he has signed a contract about this with all these parameters around this.
Right. And the whole reason SAG exists is because of that. Like SAG exists to protect people who are in like content that's created. Yet we've got this whole industry of like stuff happening to what we were talking about earlier is like the FTC would just grow a pair and realize its role.
If you figure out who you are, then you can control your own destiny. And but I think also the problem is, if you think about it at this basis level, we all went to college. We know what we're doing. We're also in business. We understand what a P&L is. And as basis level, we're business people. You're dealing with people who are not.
Right.
And a lot of them are trying to become business people, and they don't have those skills.
Yeah.
So if you don't have those skills, I think it also creates an opportunity, because if there's a grouping of people who can sort of, it's almost like you need to put influencer marketing MBA.
Right.
to give people those sorts of skills so they can actually manage what they are.
Yeah.
There actually is a chance for them, because you've got millions of people who could be essentially in these types of unions, who could actually be able to affect some change. Because if a bunch of influencers who are all on Periscope or all on Snapchat said, dude, we're not participating in any more campaigns until these standards and practices go in, brands would pay attention.
Right.
And agencies and MCNs would pay attention.
Yeah.
But because it's, you get them all over the place. There is no loyalty. Like every influencer agency says they have an exclusive, which we all know is a lie.
Right. And they all have the same number of influencers, and we all know there's only a certain amount of people out there, really.
And think, I can get to her. Well, I can get to her. Well, I can get to her. Well, if you can get to her, I can get to her. So why don't you talk to you?
Right. Right.
And every time I get closer and closer and closer, her number and price goes down, 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 down. So I get to the person, I'm like, well, how much would you really do this for? Oh, $10,000.
Yeah.
Oh, well, blah, blah, was going to say you were 30.
Yeah. I think the other thing that's going to change this and really start out getting rid of the wheat from the chaff is the social platforms themselves. So, knowing Facebook's running its own influencer campaign for Facebook Live to get celebrities and folks using live video. Live video is going to change a lot, because if you can't show visible engagement during a live stream, then
I don't want you.
That doesn't show you. That shows exactly what we were talking about before, which is you don't have an engaged audience. You've got numbers on paper, but they're not a valuable audience. They're just a bunch of bots, fakes. So I think that's going to change things. I don't know if you saw, it was interesting. YouTube just launched YouTube Community, which is, so for original content creators on YouTube, it's a way for them to continue talking to their audience after they've posted a video. So essentially, if I did, say I was a chef influencer and I was launched a video on YouTube, I could then, share the recipes afterwards. I could share GIFs. I could share pieces of content via this community channel. So it's a way to
extend the life of it.
Yeah, and I really like that, because I think it's a smart move by YouTube. They co-created it with 10 core influencers, although I hate the word. I think that, knowing that channels like Instagram / Facebook are looking at ways to show for authentication and to show if somebody is actually being paid. So thinking about the back end of the platform, so they can take a stance and say, if influencer X posts a picture of them at an event and they've got bags of swag, it can be done in partnership with
Cole Haan.
Yeah, there we go. So like, I think what the platforms do is going to really change the industry too, because they know this. They know they can't ignore the power that, you know, these content creators have on their channels.
They're not getting money out of it.
Right.
I mean, I think that's a big. I think that's where the change comes, because like they realize that they're missing out on millions and millions in revenue because like they have no control over this. So if they can put some standards and practices, they can say to brands, "Hey, listen, we'll give you this influencer toolkit." So that enables you to sort of being able to do all your FTC compliance, blah, blah, for an easy fee of $3,000 a month.
Right. So that's a big shift, I think. That didn't exist before, so it had to be smart marketers coming together and saying, you know, we need to change this. And now the platforms hold such sway, because if you don't have following on Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook, people aren't going to consider you. And if they put not regulations, but just like functionality in place that helps it easier for everybody, that makes advertisers spend more, influencers partner with brands more. Like, it's kind of a no-brainer.
Because it solves the problem. Because like,
right.
If I'm a brand, I know this person's legit. If I'm an influencer, this person, I know that I'm going to be able to actually work with a real brand.
Yeah.
And from an agency standpoint, like I can sort of properly sit in the middle because I can regulate this process. Like I can vet the right influencers. I can convince my clients why you guys are good. But then at the end, I'm sure there's great metrics behind it so that you can easily show what the ROI is, because at the end of the day, that's why we all have a job, because we've got to show what is it.
Good on ROI.
So I think that's going to be the key. So, you know, what advice do you think you've got in terms of this side of the universe?
Yeah, so I think that there's a few things. First of all, think about why you're engaging an influencer and why that's important to the brands that you're working with.
Is it even useful?
Right. It doesn't have to be. There's so many other ways to connect with an audience. Like, you don't need the influencer if there isn't that like authentic hook. So think about that. Think about the different layers of influence. Again, let's get rid of the word, but we can't just yet.
Soon, a year from now.
Think about my little pyramid. So you've got, you know, celebrities. So folks who might be an actor, actress, a more traditional
which
celebrity.
Level of Kardashian are you?
Right.
Are you Kim versus Rob or Blac Chyna?
But I would put them all in the top, because I think you've got them, then you've got social celebrities. So, you know, people who came up through their YouTube presence.
Like Casey Nesbitt.
Right, who are now kind of in the celebrity realm. Then you get into, like I was saying, the kind of micro-influencer layer. Again, hate the word, but we'll use it because that's what we're talking about. Who I think have got a real connection to, say, those different passion points, but they might have a lesser following. And then I think about advocacy and think about employees, which I think a lot of brands overlook, because these are people that like live and work and breathe a company. And just think about what you need to do for each layer and how they might become a part of creating that all-important word of mouth. It's about the long-term relationship. So you can build a long-term relationship with people who are influential to your core audience and keep them. You don't have to just pay them 50 grand to do a one-off thing. You could engage them, you know, on an ongoing basis. And there's a ton of things you could do with giving them access to behind the scenes, to product, to what the connections you can make for them. And like, you'll get so much more out of a relationship. Back to the very beginning of our discussion about what you used to do with Digital Flash. It was about building the relationships, getting people to events, bringing them exclusive content, and then that following grows and grows. And it's like you build the authentic by having a relationship rather than just the kind of the one-off transactional. So that's what I think.
Yeah, it's really about, I think as we always talk about the long tail, and I think that's actually the thing that's probably missing from the universe here, is that like if you create this long tail. I remember early on, one of our earlier campaigns for one of our clients was with Chevy, and it was with clouds. Like, think about how many years ago that was, and you know it was about getting these influencers to meet them in person, and so we were brought on to essentially create these experiences where the people who got to try out their cars actually got to meet the people who made the cars in person in these different cities. And I know for a fact that one woman who went to one of those events in 2013 is still working for Chevy, because she went, she met the people who made the cars. They automatically found out that not only was she a hardcore Chevy lover, but her mom was a Chevy lover.
Right.
She brought her mom to the party.
Love it.
She and her mom go on excursions with this brand.
Oh my God, I love it.
Years later. And, you know, and she does a bunch of different things. She's a professional influencer at this point. But, like, I've seen what her access has grown with that particular brand. But it doesn't seem like BS, because you can definitely see that, like, she legit drives that car.
Yeah.
She has fun with it.
Right.
You can see she's not phoning it in.
If you invest more time in the relationship, the output is going to be way larger. And think about the offline word of mouth too, because again, people talk outside of social platforms. You know, most recommendations are actually, they might come not on social and digital.
They're gonna be, people actually talk to each other in person.
Real life.
Like, they actually go places and
Yes.
say, hey, dude, you saw this thing? Yeah, it was awesome. And you're like, oh, dude, thanks for telling me. That's great. Like, this actually does happen.
It's to the ROI point, it's so hard to measure that stuff. But if you're authentically a fan and engaged by a brand, you're way likelier to talk about it in a positive way with people that you know.
Yeah, you have to remember that people are actually people. Right. And you will actually interact with them in different places. Right. And so if you make an experience that's lasting, like what Digital Flash does, is, you know, we always say, like, you know, our new tagline, which the new site will be showing, is you feel it. And right. Like, when you walk through an experience that we've built, it's like you really feel it. And that can be as simple as, like, people are nice to you when you walk through the door. And, like, you get a glass of wine when you walk through the door. And when you're a brand, you've got to think about all those elements when you're creating these things. Like, create something that your influencer can actually experience for real, as opposed to just saying, here's $50,000 for a tweet. Because if you bring it all back to the fact that, like, at the end of the day, people have influence because they've influenced something, because they've actually done something, you're going to be in much better shape than if you are just like, well, I'm going to pay you. Please go do this now.
Exactly.
So I think we've come to the end of the inaugural episode of The Reset. Thank you, Gemma.
Thank you, Laura.
It's been lots of fun. We're almost out of rosé. I'll refill your glass shortly.
I think I drank it all. Sorry.
That's okay. I have more. Come
you
on.
Anticipated that.
I
did.
I didn't bring extra because Gemma drinks a lot.
Newsflash.
Not news at all.
Yeah.
Hashtag not shocker. I hope you enjoyed this inaugural broadcast of The Reset, and we'll be coming to you each week with great friends from my travels across the country and in the world. And that's all she wrote. Thanks so much. The Reset podcast is sponsored by Bose. With my new Bose QC35 headphones, nothing gets between me and my music. The noise canceling is world class. They're completely Bluetooth, so there's no wires. The sound is amazing. My producer and I love these so much that we use them to record every single show. For more information about Bose QC35 headphones and other Bose products, check out Bose.com.
Audiation.